You don't notice it at first. Nothing dramatic happens. No celebration, no fireworks, just a number on a screen. $5,000. And yet, something shifts. Not in your bank account, in your behavior. You check your balance less. You hesitate differently before spending. You start thinking in months, not days. And here's the uncomfortable part. The moment you cross your first 25K, you're not just richer. You've quietly stepped into a different financial reality, one that most people never fully understand, because the system starts treating you differently long before you feel different. Right now, this matters more than ever, because for most people, money feels like a treadmill. You earn, you spend, you repeat. Maybe you save a little, maybe you don't, but it never feels like you're getting ahead. And then suddenly, you hit a number like $25,000, not $1 million, not even close, just 25K. And somehow, things start to feel different, not easier, but different. So what actually changes? Why does this number matter? And more importantly, why does it feel like the rules start to shift right here? To understand this, you have to look at how money behaves at different levels. At 0, money is survival. Every decision is immediate. Rent, food, transport. You don't think about optimization. You think about getting through the week. At $1,000, nothing changes. At $5,000, still nothing. Even at $10,000, you're just slightly less stressed, because here's the truth. Up to a certain point, money doesn't work for you. It just sits there. It waits. And you guard it. But around 20K to 25K, something subtle begins. Money starts to have options, and options are where power lives. Let's break this down simply. Imagine you have $500. What can you do with it? Pay a bill. Fix something. Maybe buy time. Now imagine you have $25,000. Suddenly, you have choices. You can invest. You can negotiate. You can wait. And waiting is one of the most underrated financial advantages in the world, because most people can't wait. They need money now. So they accept bad deals, low salaries, high interest, loans, unfair prices. But when you have even a small buffer like 25K, you gain something invisible. You gain time. And time changes everything. This is where things get interesting, because the system rewards people who can wait, not people who work harder, not people who try more, people who can delay. It sounds unfair. That's because it is. Think about it. If you can wait, you don't have to sell your time cheaply. You don't have to panic. You don't have to say yes to everything. And suddenly, your decisions improve. Not because you're smarter, but because you're not desperate. Now here's the part no one explains. $25,000 is not a lot of money. In most cities, it won't even cover a year of expenses. So why does it feel like such a big shift? Because it's not about the amount. It's about crossing a threshold. Before this point, money is reactive. After this point, money can become strategic. That's the shift. Not visible, not obvious, but real. Let's talk about what actually starts changing. First, your relationship with risk. When you have nothing, risk feels terrifying. When you have a buffer, risk becomes manageable. You might start thinking about investments, not big ones, small ones. You test things, and that's how learning begins. Second, your relationship with income. Before 25K, your income is everything. Lose your job, and everything collapses. After 25K, your income is still important, but it's no longer your only lifeline. That difference is psychological, but powerful, because it changes how you negotiate, how you speak, how you walk into a room. Third, your relationship with money itself. At lower levels, money feels fragile. You protect it. You fear losing it. But once you cross a certain point, you start thinking about using money, not just saving it. That's a completely different mindset. And it's where most people get stuck, because they never cross that line. Now here's where the system quietly steps in. Because once you have money, even a small amount, you get access, better banking options, lower fees, investment opportunities, nothing dramatic, but enough to matter. Meanwhile, people with less money, they pay more, higher interest rates, more penalties, fewer options. So, the gap slowly widens, not because one group is smarter, but because the system is built that way. This is the irony. The people who need money the most pay the highest cost for it, and the people who already have money get it cheaper. So when you reach 25K, you're not just saving money. You're stepping into a system that works slightly more in your favor. Slightly, but over time, slightly becomes significantly. Now let's talk about the hype. Because online, you'll hear things like, your first 100K is the hardest. Money compounds. Just invest and wait. And yes, there's truth there. But it's incomplete, because between 0 and 25K, there's no magic, no compounding miracle, no passive income, just discipline, just time, just friction. That part is rarely talked about, because it's not exciting. And even after 25K, nothing is guaranteed. You can still lose it. Bad decisions, bad timing, bad luck. Money doesn't protect you from mistakes. It just gives you a cushion. So, why does life feel different? Because you're no longer operating at the edge. You're no longer one mistake away from collapse. You have space, and space creates clarity. But here's the bigger question. If 25K changes how you experience money, what happens at 50K, at 100K, at 1 million? Do the rules keep changing, or do they just become more visible? Because if the system rewards people who already have money, then the real game isn't earning. It's crossing thresholds, getting to the point where the rules quietly shift in your favor, even if just a little. And that leads to an uncomfortable thought. If most people never reach that first 25K, then they never experience that shift. They stay stuck in reactive mode, working, spending, repeating, not because they're lazy, but because they never get enough distance from the edge. So maybe the real question isn't, how do you get rich? Maybe it's simpler. What changes when you're no longer desperate? And how many people never get the chance to find out?